Deep in the highlands of modern-day Ethiopia and Eritrea, there once stood a kingdom so powerful, so advanced, that it rivaled the greatest civilizations of its time. This was the kingdom of Axum, a place of towering obelisks, thriving trade networks, and a rich culture that left an imprint on the course of African and world history. Yet today, few people outside of historians and archaeologists know its name. Its story has been largely forgotten, overshadowed by other empires in Europe and the Middle East, but Axum's legacy remains undeniable. Imagine a city bustling with merchants from across the Red Sea, caravan trains laden with ivory, gold, and exotic spices, and towering stone monuments reaching toward the sky. Axum was not just a city or a kingdom, it was a crossroads of commerce, religion, and culture. At its peak, they controlled vital trade routes connecting the Mediterranean to the Indian Ocean, linking Africa to distant lands in Arabia, India, and even the far reaches of the Roman Empire. Axum was more than just trade and wealth. Its rulers were visionary, building a state with sophisticated administration and forging alliances that extended its influence far beyond its borders. Kings like Azana would later leave an indelible mark, not only through conquest and diplomacy, but by embracing a religion that would shape the region for centuries. Christianity. Long before many parts of Europe adopted it, Axum became one of the earliest Christian states in the world, a testament to its openness to new ideas and its pivotal role in the history of Africa. Yet the kingdom's story is shrouded in mystery. Archaeologists still debate its origins, the full extent of its territory, and the reasons for its eventual decline. What caused this great empire, which once minted its own coins and built towering obelisks that still stand today, to fade from prominence? How did a kingdom so advanced disappear from the world's collective memory? In this documentary, we will journey into the heart of Axum, exploring its cities, its people, and its culture. We will uncover the secrets hidden in its ancient ruins, from the enormous stelae, the marked royal tombs, to the intricate artifacts that hint at a sophisticated society. We will follow the paths of merchants and missionaries, soldiers and kings, tracing how Axum rose to greatness and why it ultimately vanished from history books. By the end of our journey, the story of Axum will no longer be forgotten. Its legacy, one of innovation, wealth, and spiritual significance, demonstrates that Africa has always been home to great civilizations, capable of shaping the world in ways that still echo today. This is the tale of a kingdom that dared to reach the skies, a kingdom whose history is waiting to be rediscovered. Welcome to the Kingdom of Axum, Africa's forgotten empire. The Kingdom of Axum was nestled in the northern highlands of what is now Ethiopia and Eritrea, a region defined by steep mountains, fertile valleys, and a strategic location that shaped the empire's destiny. The highlands offered natural protection, making it difficult for invaders to penetrate the heart of the kingdom. At the same time, the fertile terraces carved into the slopes allowed farmers to cultivate grains such as barley, wheat, and teff, supporting dense populations and thriving communities. Streams and rivers cut through the landscape, providing water for agriculture and settlement, while the surrounding hills created a natural barrier that helped Axum maintain security and stability. This geography was also a gateway to opportunity. Axum sat near the Red Sea, giving it direct access to maritime trade with Arabia, India, and the Mediterranean world. The port city of Agilis became one of the kingdom's busiest trade hubs, where merchants exchanged gold, ivory, exotic animals, and textiles for spices, glassware, and fine goods from faraway lands. The combination of defensible terrain and access to trade allowed Axum to develop into a hub of wealth and influence, linking Africa to global networks in a way few other kingdoms could match at the time. The natural environment shaped not only the economy but also the culture and daily life of the settlements were often concentrated on higher ground, with houses built from stone and wood, while farmland expanded in terraces down the mountain sides. The highland climate, cooler and more temperate than the surrounding encouraged stable community, fostering the growth of local governance, administrative systems, and organized settlements that would eventually evolve into the kingdom's capital and surrounding cities. Geography was not just a backdrop, it was a crucial factor in Aksum's rise as one of Africa's most powerful empires. The origins of Axum lie in a blending of indigenous highland communities and migrant groups from southern Arabia. Archaeological evidence shows that as early as the first millennium BCE, farming villages were established in the region, cultivating grains, domesticating animals, and forming tight-knit communities. Over centuries, these settlements evolved into early urban centers, laying the foundation for the centralized kingdom that would emerge. Axumite tradition and historical inscriptions suggest a mixing of cultures, with local rulers intermarrying with Semitic-speaking migrants. This fusion influenced the development of the GS language, which became the medium for inscriptions, religious texts, and official records. The early society combined local customs with imported ideas, creating a uniquely adaptable culture, capable of both preserving traditions and innovating in trade, governance, and technology. By the 1st century CE, Axum had begun to appear as a recognizable state. Monumental constructions such as obelisks and royal tombs demonstrated advanced engineering and social organization. These structures were not merely symbolic, they reflected centralized authority, religious significance, and the resources available to rulers who could mobilize labor on a grand scale. Early Axumite settlements also participated in regional trade networks, exchanging goods and ideas with neighbors, which helped the society grow more sophisticated and outward-looking. The consolidation of scattered settlements into a unified kingdom was a gradual but transformative process. By the 1st century CE, kings had begun centralizing authority, establishing control over both highland and lowland regions. This political organization allowed Axum to secure trade routes, protect its borders, and maintain a stable society capable of expansion. Monarchs were often symbolized through stele inscriptions and ceremonial spaces that highlighted both their authority and divine connection. The kingdom's leaders were strategic in commerce and diplomacy. They fostered relationships with foreign merchants and maintained internal production of gold, ivory, and other trade goods. The centralization of power enabled the creation of a bureaucratic system capable of supporting taxation, administration, and public works, making Axum a formidable regional power. Culture and religion were intertwined with governance. Indigenous beliefs blended with Southern Arabian influences, laying the groundwork for later religious developments, including the kingdom's adoption of Christianity. Early sacred sites, temples, and public spaces reinforced social cohesion, ensuring that religion, leadership, and culture are mutually supportive. This holistic foundation allowed Axum not only to rise but to endure for centuries, setting the stage for its golden age as one of Africa's most remarkable and influential empires. The kingdom of Axum's rise began with its early kings, visionary leaders, who transformed a cluster of highland settlements into a centralized and powerful state. These early rulers understood that strength came not only from military, might, but from strategic governance, economic management, and cultural unity. They established control over the fertile highland valleys, strategically placed mountain passes and key trade routes leading to the Red Sea, ensuring that the kingdom could defend itself against potential invaders while facilitating commerce. By centralizing authority, the kings could coordinate agricultural production, organize labor for monumental projects, and maintain social order across widely dispersed communities. Monumental, steely, towering stone obelisks and intricately carved inscriptions became symbols of royal authority, broadcasting the king's power to citizens in neighboring states alike. These structures were both practical and symbolic, marking royal tombs, commemorating victories, and reinforcing the divine legitimacy of the monarchy. Administration evolved alongside these symbolic acts. Local governors and officials were appointed to manage regions, collect tribute, oversee agricultural production, and maintain trade networks. Scribes and record keepers documented transactions, laws, and decrees, demonstrating the kingdom's growing bureaucratic sophistication. Early Axumite kings were also forward-thinking in trade policy. They recognized that wealth and influence depended on commerce, particularly through the Red Sea port of Adu. Merchants from Arabia, India, and beyond traveled to exchanging spices, textiles, glassware, and luxury goods for gold, ivory, and exotic animals. The kingdom minted its first coins, both silver and gold, which served not only as currency but as a symbol of sovereignty, signaling to foreign traders that Axum was a state with both political authority and economic reliability. This combination of centralized power, economic foresight, and symbolic authority allowed Axum to establish a foundation that would endure for centuries, setting the stage for territorial expansion and cultural achievements that would astonish historians and archaeologists alike. With internal structures solidly in place, Axum turned outward, extending its influence into surrounding regions. Military campaigns secured the fertile lowlands, bringing neighboring communities under the kingdom's control. Axumite armies were composed of infantry trained to defend the highlands and cavalry, capable of rapid strikes across open terrain. Expansion was not purely military. Diplomacy and strategic alliances also played a major role. Marriage, treaties, and trade agreements created networks of influence that allowed the kingdom to project power without constant warfare. Axum's growing reputation as a formidable and fair state attracted both merchants and allies, enhancing its regional authority. Trade remained a lifeblood of the kingdom. Agilis flourished as a commercial hub, facilitating exchanges between Africa, Arabia, India, and the broader Mediterranean. Gold, ivory, and exotic animals flowed out of Axum, whilst textiles and luxury items entered, creating wealth that financed monumental building projects and the administration of the kingdom. Control over these trade routes allowed Axum not only to profit, but to influence the movement of goods and culture across vast distances. This interconnectedness positioned Axum as a bridge between continents, giving it both economic and diplomatic leverage. The kingdom also began projecting cultural influence alongside political power. Obelisks and palaces rose throughout the highlands, displaying architectural skill and reinforcing the authority of kings. Public ceremonies, religious festivals, and monumental inscriptions celebrated royal achievements while shaping the identity of the Axumite people. By the 3rd and 4th centuries CE, Axum had established itself as a respected regional power, with influence reaching across the Red Sea into southern Arabia and beyond. The combination of military strength, diplomatic skill, economic foresight, and cultural innovation created a state capable of enduring challenges and thriving as one of the great empires of ancient Africa. By the early centuries CE, Axum had matured into a kingdom capable of long-term stability, governance, and international influence. The monarchy's integration of political, religious, and cultural authority ensured the loyalty of subjects and the cohesion of society. Kings were seen not only as rulers, but as intermediaries between the divine and the people, a concept reinforced through inscriptions, ceremonial rituals, and monumental construction. This melding of spiritual and political authority allowed the kingdom to enforce laws, manage resources, and expand its reach while maintaining internal unity. Infrastructure became a critical factor in Axum's enduring success. Roads linked highland centers with lowland settlements and the coastal port of Axum, facilitating trade, troop movement, and communication. Agriculture, supported by terrace hillsides and irrigation systems, provided a stable food supply, while wealth from trade financed monumental architecture and religious institutions. Coins minted by Axumite kings circulated widely, demonstrating the kingdom's economic sophistication and reinforcing its authority both internally and abroad. The cultural foundation of Axum during this period was equally important. Indigenous beliefs blended with South Arabian influences, creating a society open to innovation yet respectful of tradition. Early sacred sites, temples, and palaces reflected the kingdom's integration of religion, governance, and public life. This cultural framework laid the groundwork for one of Axum's most significant developments, the adoption of Christianity in the 4th century CE. The combination of strong central authority, economic power, and a cohesive culture allowed Axum to thrive for centuries, leaving a legacy that would influence African history long after its decline. By the end of this era, Axum had solidified itself as a formidable kingdom, prepared to enter a golden age of trade, religion, and architectural achievement that would astonish the ancient world.
The kingdom of Axum was not only powerful politically and economically, but also remarkable for its complex and hierarchical society. At the top of the social pyramid were the kings and their royal families, whose authority was considered both political and divine. These rulers were supported by a class of nobles, priests and administrators who oversaw governance, religious rites and trade networks. Below them, a class of skilled artisans, merchants, and farmers formed the backbone of the economy, producing goods, cultivating crops, and sustaining commerce. Laborers and peasants worked the fields, tended livestock, and contributed to monumental construction projects, ensuring the kingdom's stability and prosperity. Life in Axumite cities and villages reflected the integration of social roles with cultural practices. Houses were typically constructed from stone or mud brick, with thatched roofs in some rural areas. Villages were organized around central spaces for markets, religious activities and community gatherings. Farming was essential, with terraced fields maximizing the fertile highlands. Villagers cultivated grains like barley, wheat and teff, and raised cattle, sheep and goats, which provided food, labor and trade goods. Markets were lively places, where merchants exchanged everything from spices and textiles to gold, ivory, and exotic animals brought by caravans from distant lands. These interactions allowed for the spread of ideas and cultural influences from across Africa, Arabia, and beyond. Education and literacy played a significant role in Axumite society, particularly for the elite. The Ge'ez script allowed for the recording of laws, religious texts, and monumental inscriptions. Scribes were highly valued, preserving knowledge and facilitating administration. Religious leaders held influence over both spiritual and political matters, guiding the moral and ethical frameworks that shaped daily life. Family structures were organized around kinship ties, with strong emphasis on lineage and inheritance. Gender roles were defined but flexible in certain contexts, with women participating in domestic management, local trade, and religious ceremonies. This structured yet adaptable social system allowed Axum to maintain order while fostering cultural growth and economic expansion. Axumite culture was expressed vividly through art, architecture, and material production. The kingdom is perhaps most famous for its towering stelae, enormous stone obelisks, intricately carved to commemorate kings and nobles, mark tombs, and demonstrate engineering skill. Each stela was carefully shaped and decorated with symbolic motifs, representing royal authority and cosmological beliefs. In addition to these monumental works, Axumites created smaller sculptures, carvings, and everyday objects with remarkable craftsmanship. Items such as pottery, jewelry, and religious artifacts reveal a society that valued beauty, functionality, and cultural expression. Buildings reflected both practical needs and symbolic purposes. Palaces, temples, and administrative structures were constructed from stone, featuring courtyards, ceremonial halls, and decorative carvings. Religious sites often combined indigenous beliefs with foreign influences, such as South Arabian motifs, reflecting Axum's connections through trade and migration. Public spaces, including markets and gathering areas, were designed to accommodate commerce, civic events, and communal rituals. The architecture of Axum was not merely aesthetic. It demonstrated social hierarchy, reinforced political authority, and created spaces for cultural continuity. Clothing and personal adornment were also significant markers of status and identity. The elite wore fine linen, decorated with intricate patterns and jewelry made from gold, beads, and precious stones. Commoners' clothing was simpler but functional, suited to the demands of farming, herding, and trade. Hairstyles, tattoos, and scarification were sometimes used to denote age, status, or affiliation within the community. Material culture in Axum was deeply intertwined with social, religious, and economic life, creating a visual and functional narrative of the kingdom's values, achievements, and connections with the wider world. Religion was central to Axumite society, providing moral guidance, legitimizing political authority, and influencing daily life. Before the adoption of Christianity, the kingdom practiced a combination of indigenous beliefs and South Arabian influences. Deities associated with fertility, agriculture, and protection were worshipped alongside ancestral spirits. Rituals, offerings, and sacred sites ensured harmony between the human, natural, and divine realms. Religious leaders played a crucial role in maintaining social cohesion, mediating disputes, and performing ceremonies that reinforced both spiritual and political hierarchies. Cultural practices extended beyond religion. Music, dance, storytelling, and oral traditions were vital in preserving history, transmitting knowledge, and entertaining communities. Festivals marked the cycles of agriculture, royal ceremonies, and religious observances, providing opportunities for both communal gathering and cultural expression. Education, particularly for elites, included training in reading, writing, administration, and religious knowledge, ensuring continuity of governance and belief systems. Language and literature were key tools for maintaining cultural identity. The Gué's script and language allowed for the recording of historical events, legal codes, and religious texts. Inscriptions on stelae, coins, and monuments preserved the deeds of kings and the values of society for generations to come. Through these intertwined systems of governance, religion, and culture, Axumite society developed resilience, cohesion, and a unique identity that would shape the kingdom's golden age and influence neighboring regions. One of the main reasons the kingdom of Axum became so powerful was its control over trade. Located near the Red Sea, Axum sat at the crossroads of some of the most important trade routes in the ancient world. Merchants traveling between Africa, Arabia, India, and the Mediterranean often passed through Axumite territory, making the kingdom a central hub for commerce. This position allowed Axum to accumulate wealth, influence, and political power far beyond what its size might suggest. The most important gateway to these trade networks was the port city of Adulis. Situated along the Red Sea coast, Adulis served as the kingdom's connection to international maritime trade. Ships from distant lands arrived carrying goods such as spices from India, silk from Asia, glassware from the Roman world, and fine textiles from Arabia. These goods were then transported inland to the capital and other cities through caravans that crossed the highlands. In exchange, Axum exported valuable products that were highly sought after across the ancient world. Gold from the interior regions of Africa was one of the kingdom's most prized exports. Ivory from African elephants, rhinoceros horns, exotic animal skins, and incense were also traded in large quantities. Some merchants even transported live animals such as monkeys or exotic birds, which were popular among wealthy elites in foreign lands. Because Axum controlled both inland and coastal trade routes, it was able to tax merchants and regulate commerce. This steady flow of wealth helped fund construction projects, military expansion, and the administrative systems that allowed the kingdom to function effectively. Trade was not simply an economic activity, it was the foundation of Axum's rise to power. One of the clearest signs of Axum's economic sophistication was its use of coinage. Axum became one of the first civilizations in sub-Saharan Africa to mint its own coins. These coins were typically made from gold, silver, or bronze, and often featured images of the ruling king along with inscriptions, written in the Ge'ez script. The coins served several important purposes. First, they made trade easier by providing a standardized form of payment. Instead of relying entirely on barter, merchants could exchange goods using currency that had recognized value. Second, the coins acted as a political symbol, demonstrating the authority and stability of the Axumite kingdom. When foreign traders encountered Axumite coins, they immediately recognized the kingdom as a legitimate and organized state. Markets were common throughout Axumite cities and villages. Local farmers brought grain, vegetables, and livestock to sell, while artisans offered pottery, tools, and woven goods. Merchants arriving from distant lands displayed foreign items such as glass beads, spices, and fine fabrics. These markets were not only centers of trade, but also important social spaces where news, ideas, and cultural influences spread among the population. The wealth generated through trade allowed Axumite rulers to sponsor large building projects and maintain a strong government. Palaces, temples, roads, and monumental stelae required enormous resources, and trade revenue made these achievements possible. In many ways, Axum's economy was one of the most advanced systems in the ancient African world. As trade networks expanded, Axum began interacting with some of the most powerful civilizations of the ancient world. Roman merchants traveled through the Red Sea, Arabian traders crossed deserts with caravans, and Indian ships sailed across the Indian Ocean. Axum found itself positioned between all of these regions, acting as a bridge connecting continents. Historical records from Greek and Roman writers even describe Axum as one of the great powers of its time. Some accounts listed it alongside major civilizations such as Rome, Persia, and China. This recognition shows how important Axum had become within global trade networks. The kingdom also used its economic power to influence political relationships. By controlling key trade routes, Axum could negotiate favorable alliances and strengthen diplomatic ties with neighboring regions. Wealth allowed the kingdom to maintain armies, build infrastructure, and project influence beyond its borders. However, trade did more than generate wealth. It also brought cultural exchange. Ideas, religions, technologies, and artistic styles traveled alongside merchants. Through these interactions, Axum developed a diverse and dynamic culture shaped by influences from Africa, Arabia, and the Mediterranean world. By the height of its power, the kingdom of Axum had become one of the most important trading civilizations in the ancient world. Its merchants connected distant lands, its coins circulated across regions, and its wealth fueled a golden age of cultural and political achievement. Trade was not simply part of Axum's economy. It was the engine that powered the empire's rise and influence. During the early centuries of the Axumite kingdom, religion was a mixture of local, African traditions and beliefs, influenced by neighboring regions, especially South Arabia. People worshipped multiple gods connected to nature, fertility, protection, and the power of kings. Temples and sacred sites were built where priests carried out rituals and offerings. These ceremonies were meant to ensure prosperity, good harvests, and protection for the kingdom. However, during the 4th century, Axum experienced one of the most important religious transformations in African history, the adoption of Christianity. This change is closely connected to the story of a man named Frumentius. According to historical accounts, Frumentius was a young traveler from the eastern Mediterranean who ended up in the Axumite court after surviving a shipwreck. Over time, he gained the trust of the royal family and became an advisor to the king. Frumentius played a major role in introducing Christian teachings to the Axumite elite. As he shared these ideas, the royal court began to take interest in the new religion. Eventually, the Axumite king at the time, King Ezana, made the historic decision to convert to Christianity. His conversion marked a turning point for the entire kingdom. King Ezana's adoption of Christianity did not happen instantly across the entire population, but it set the foundation for a new religious identity. As the ruler, his influence was enormous, and his support helped Christianity spread quickly through Axum's cities and villages. Churches began to replace some earlier temples, and Christian symbols started appearing in official inscriptions and monuments. This moment was historically significant because Axum became one of the earliest Christian kingdoms in the world. At a time when Christianity was still spreading across the Roman Empire and nearby regions, Axum embraced the religion and integrated it into its political and cultural life. The decision would shape the kingdom's identity for centuries and influence the religious traditions of Ethiopia that continue even today. After King Ezana's conversion, Christianity began to spread throughout the Axumite kingdom. Missionaries and priests traveled between cities and villages, teaching the new faith and helping establish churches. Over time, Christian beliefs became deeply connected to Axumite society and government. The king was now seen not only as a political ruler, but also as a protector of the Christian faith. One of the clearest signs of this transformation can be seen in Axum's coinage. Before the conversion, Axumite coins often featured symbols connected to traditional religious beliefs. After Ezana adopted Christianity, new coins began to display the Christian cross. This change was more than symbolic. It showed the world that Axum had embraced a new religious identity. Christianity also influenced architecture and art. Churches began to appear across the kingdom, often built using the same advanced stone construction techniques used in palaces and monuments. Inside these churches, religious texts and symbols helped spread Christian teachings to the population. Priests and monks became important figures within society, guiding spiritual life and preserving religious traditions. Despite these changes, the transition was gradual. Many local traditions continued alongside Christian practices, creating a unique religious culture that blended older customs with the new faith. This blending helped the religion spread more smoothly among the population, as people adapted their traditions while embracing new beliefs. Axum's adoption of Christianity also strengthened its connections with other Christian communities around the world. Religious ties formed between Axum and Christian regions in the Mediterranean and the Middle East. These connections helped exchange religious knowledge, scriptures, and traditions that influenced the development of the Axumite church. As Christianity became firmly established in Axum, it began shaping nearly every aspect of life within the kingdom. Religious festivals, church gatherings, and community worship became central parts of daily life. Christian teachings influenced laws, moral values, and the way people understood their place in society. Monasteries and religious schools were also founded, where monks studied scripture and preserved important writings. These institutions played a major role in maintaining literacy and education. Throughout the region, the Ge'ez language continued to be used for religious texts, helping unify spiritual teachings across the kingdom. The Axumite Church eventually developed into one of the oldest Christian traditions in the world. Its practices, traditions, and interpretations of Scripture became unique compared to other Christian communities. Over time, this religious identity would continue evolving and eventually form the foundation of what is known today as the Ethiopian Orthodox Church. Christianity also strengthened Axum's political identity. By aligning itself with the growing Christian world, Axum positioned itself as a powerful religious kingdom. This gave its rulers greater legitimacy and influence in diplomatic relationships with neighboring states. The adoption of Christianity marked one of the most defining chapters in Axum's history. What began as the influence of a single traveler eventually transformed an entire civilization. Through royal support, cultural adaptation, and religious devotion, Christianity became deeply woven into the kingdom's identity. Even long after the fall of Axum, the religious traditions established during this period would survive. Today, many of the beliefs, practices, and churches that trace their origins back to the Axumite kingdom continue to shape the cultural and spiritual life of Ethiopia and surrounding regions.
The night air over Axum felt different. Caleb noticed it first. The city that once hummed with quiet life, distant drums, merchants whispering, guards shifting their spears, now sat under a strange silence. Even the wind seemed afraid to move through the tall stone obelisks. "Something's wrong," Caleb whispered. Beside him, Adavia tightened her cloak. "You feel it too." They stood on the edge of the ancient plaza, staring at the tallest stela in the city. Earlier that day, the old monk had warned them. When the shadow touches the crown of the stone, the truth buried under Axum will wake. Caleb hadn't believed him. Until now. The moon slowly climbed behind the towering monument. Its light stretched across the stone like a blade, and the shadow began to move. But shadows don't move by themselves. A low rumble shook the ground. Dust slid off the ancient carvings as the base of the monument cracked open. A hidden doorway revealed itself, something that had been sealed for centuries. Adavia stepped back. That wasn't there before. Caleb stared into the darkness below. Cold air poured out of the opening like the breath of something ancient. Then they heard it. Metal, clinking, footsteps. Someone or something was already inside. A torch suddenly lit deep within the passage, flickering against the stone walls far below. For a split second, Caleb saw symbols carved into the staircase spiraling underground. Symbols older than the kingdom itself. The monk said the kings of Axum hid their greatest secret beneath the city, Adavia said quietly. Caleb grabbed a torch from the nearby guard post and lit it. Then we're about to find out what they were hiding. They stepped inside. The stone door behind them slowly groaned and sealed shut. The staircase twisted deeper and deeper underground. The air grew colder with every step. Strange carvings lined the walls, warriors, crowns, and something that looked like a glowing sphere held above the city. Caleb stopped suddenly. At the bottom of the staircase stood 3 armored figures, not guards, treasure hunters. And in the center of the chamber behind them, a massive golden chest rested on a stone platform. One of the men turned slowly and smiled. "Well," he said, gripping his sword, "looks like we've got company." Adavia whispered, "Caleb, I don't think they plan on sharing." Caleb raised the torch, stepping forward into the chamber. "Good," he said. "I wasn't planning on asking." At the height of its power, the city of Axum was one of the most impressive urban centers in the ancient African world. Travelers and merchants arriving from the Red Sea, trade routes would have encountered a thriving city filled with stone buildings, busy markets, and towering monuments that symbolized the strength of the Axumite kingdom. These monuments, known as stelae, were among the most remarkable features of the city. Carved from massive blocks of granite, some of these structures stood more than 20 meters tall and were carefully designed to resemble multi-story buildings with carved windows and door-like patterns. The stelae served an important ceremonial purpose. Most were built above royal burial sites, marking the tombs of kings and powerful members of society. Beneath the ground were elaborate tomb chambers, constructed with carefully cut stone blocks. These underground structures held treasures, offerings, and the remains of Axumite rulers. The construction of these monuments required incredible planning and organization, showing how advanced the Axumite state had become. Skilled workers, engineers, and large labor forces worked together to carve and transport these enormous stones. Beyond the famous monuments, the city itself was well organized. At its center stood royal compounds, where kings governed the kingdom and met foreign merchants and diplomats. These compounds included large stone palaces, courtyards, and administrative buildings. Surrounding the royal areas were neighborhoods where craftsmen, traders, and farmers lived. Homes often had stone foundations with wooden upper levels, designed to handle the highland climate. Religion also shaped the city's layout. Before the kingdom adopted Christianity, temples dedicated to local gods were important centers of worship. Later, after the conversion of King Azana in the 4th century, Christian churches began appearing throughout the city. These churches gradually became central gathering places for the people. Daily life in Axum was closely connected to trade. Merchants arriving from the port of Adulis brought goods from across the Red Sea and beyond. Markets were filled with traders exchanging gold, ivory, textiles, and other goods. Because of this constant movement of people and products, Axum became a meeting point of cultures and ideas. Through its monuments, buildings, and markets, the city of Axum stood as the heart of a powerful empire and a symbol of one of Africa's greatest ancient civilizations. The monumental landscape of Axum was more than just a display of engineering skill. It reflected the political power and cultural identity of the Axumite kingdom. The towering steely fields surrounding the city served as lasting reminders of the authority of Axum's rulers. Each monument represented the legacy of a king or noble family, linking their memory to the physical landscape of the city. For the people of Axum, these structures symbolized stability, continuity, and the strength of their civilization. Archaeological discoveries suggest that the construction of these monuments required careful planning and advanced techniques. Massive granite stones were quarried from nearby hills and transported to the city using manpower, wooden rollers, and possibly animals. Craftsmen then carved the surfaces with detailed designs that imitated the appearance of tall buildings. The process of raising these stelae into a standing position was extremely difficult and likely involved ramps, ropes, and coordinated labor from large groups of workers. Beyond the stele fields, Axum continued to develop as an important religious center. After the kingdom adopted Christianity during the reign of King Izana, churches and religious institutions became central features of the city. These buildings were places of worship, learning, and community gathering. Priests and monks helped spread Christian teachings while preserving written texts and traditions in the Ge'ez language. The city also remained closely connected to trade and diplomacy. Merchants from distant lands still traveled through Axum, bringing goods and ideas from across Africa, Arabia, and the Mediterranean. Foreign visitors often described Axum as a wealthy and powerful kingdom, noting its organized government and impressive architecture. The city served not only as a capital but also as a symbol of Axum's influence in the ancient world. Although centuries have passed since the kingdom's peak, the ruins of Axum still stand today. The stelae, tombs, and foundations of ancient buildings provide valuable clues about how this civilization once functioned. Through archaeological research and historical study, scholars continue to uncover new details about the lives of the people who built and lived in this remarkable city. Even in ruins, Axum remains one of the most important historical sites in Africa. Its monuments and artifacts remind us that this city was once the heart of a powerful empire that connected Africa to the wider world through trade, culture, and religion. For centuries, the city of Axum stood as the powerful heart of a thriving empire. Its markets were full of traders, its monuments towered over the land, and its rulers controlled trade routes that connected Africa with the Mediterranean world and the Indian Ocean. However, like many great civilizations in history, Axum eventually began to decline. The process did not happen suddenly. Instead, it unfolded slowly over generations as several different problems began to weaken the kingdom. One of the biggest challenges Axum faced was a shift in global trade routes. During its golden age, Axum benefited greatly from its location near the Red Sea. Goods traveled through the port city of Adulis and moved inland through Axumite territory. Merchants traded gold, ivory, spices, and textiles across vast distances. But as centuries passed, trade patterns began to change. New powers in Arabia and the Middle East gained control over important sea routes, reducing the influence of Axum in international commerce. Environmental pressures may also have played a role in the kingdom's weakening. Axum relied heavily on agriculture in the surrounding highlands, where farmers grew crops and raised livestock to support the population. Over time, heavy farming and deforestation may have damaged the land. Soil erosion and declining crop production could have made it harder for the kingdom to sustain its cities and armies. Political pressures added to these problems. As Axum's economic power declined, its ability to maintain control over distant territories weakened. Neighboring groups and rival kingdoms began rising in strength, creating new competition for land and resources. Without the same level of wealth from trade, Axum's rulers struggled to maintain the influence they once had. Despite these growing challenges, the city of Axum did not disappear overnight. Life continued for many people living in the region. Farmers still worked the land. Churches continued religious traditions, and the memory of the great Axumite kingdom remained strong. However, the days when Axum stood among the most powerful civilizations of the ancient world were slowly coming to an end. As the Axumite kingdom weakened, the political center of power gradually shifted away from the city of Axum. New communities and regional leaders began emerging in other parts of the Ethiopian highlands. Over time, these changes reduced Axum's role as the dominant capital of the region. Trade, which had once been the foundation of Axum's wealth, continued to decline. Merchant ships that once traveled regularly through Red Sea ports began favoring other trade networks, controlled by rising powers in Arabia and the Islamic world. As these routes shifted, the once busy commercial connections that brought wealth into Axum became less active. Markets that had once been filled with foreign traders and goods slowly lost their international importance. Even though Axum's political and economic power declined, the city remained an important religious center. Christianity had become deeply rooted in the region after the conversion of King Azana centuries earlier. Churches continued to operate, and religious leaders preserved traditions that connected the people to their Axumite past. Pilgrims and worshippers still visited the city, keeping its spiritual importance alive even as its political influence faded. Archaeological evidence suggests that many of Axum's monumental structures remained standing long after the kingdom's decline. The massive stelae, royal tombs, and stone foundations of ancient buildings continued to mark the landscape. These structures served as reminders of the city's earlier greatness and the achievements of the civilization that once flourished there. Over time, new kingdoms would rise in the region, building on cultural and religious traditions that had developed during the Axumite era. Although Axum was no longer the powerful empire it once was, its influence did not disappear. Instead, its legacy continued shaping the history and identity of the surrounding regions. Even after the fall of the Axumite Empire, the city of Axum remained one of the most historically significant locations in Africa. Its monuments, ruins, and religious traditions preserved the memory of a civilization that had once connected Africa to distant parts of the ancient world. Travelers, historians, and archaeologists have long been fascinated by the remains of the city and the mysteries surrounding its rise and decline. Today, the archaeological site of Axum is recognized as one of the most important historical locations in Africa. The ancient stela fields, royal tombs, and remnants of palaces offer valuable clues about how the Axumite kingdom once functioned. Through careful excavation and research, historians continue learning more about the people who built this remarkable civilization. Axum's legacy extends far beyond its ruins. The spread of Christianity during the Axumite era helped shape the religious traditions that still exist in the region today. Cultural practices, language, and historical identity within Ethiopia and nearby areas are strongly connected to the kingdom's past. The story of Axum reminds us that some of the world's most powerful civilizations can eventually fade from global memory. Yet even when empires fall, their achievements remain visible in monuments, traditions, and historical records. The ruins of Axum stand as evidence of a once great African kingdom that played a major role in ancient trade, culture, and religion. Although centuries have passed since Axum ruled a vast network of trade routes, the city still holds a powerful place in history. Its towering stone monuments and ancient foundations continue to tell the story of a civilization that once stood among the great powers of the ancient world. For many centuries after the decline of the Axumite Empire, the ancient city of Axum slowly faded from the awareness of the outside world. While local communities continued living in the region and preserved many of the traditions connected to Axum's past, Much of the wider world no longer recognized the importance the city once held. The towering stone monuments and ruins remained standing, but the stories of the empire that built them were known mostly through local traditions and a few scattered historical writings. Early knowledge of Axum came from ancient texts, written by travelers and merchants who had visited the region during the height of the kingdom's power. Greek and Roman writers described Axum as a wealthy and influential civilization. Connected to international trade, one of the most famous records was written in a document known as the Periplus of the Erythraean Sea, a guide for merchants traveling through the Red Sea and Indian Ocean. This text described the port of Adulis and confirmed Axum's importance in global trade networks. However, as centuries passed, many of these historical accounts were forgotten or overlooked. It was not until later explorers and historians began studying the region that Axum's significance began to reappear in global historical discussions. Travelers who visited the area were amazed to see the massive stelae still standing in the landscape. These stone monuments were unlike anything most visitors had seen in Africa, immediately raising questions about the civilization capable of building them. When scholars began comparing the ruins with ancient writings, they realized the monuments belonged to the powerful Axumite kingdom, described in early records. This discovery helped historians piece together the story of one of Africa's most important ancient civilizations. As archaeological research expanded, historians and scientists began studying the ruins of Axum more closely. Excavations revealed the foundations of ancient buildings, royal tombs, and ceremonial spaces that once formed the center of the Axumite capital. These discoveries helped researchers understand how the city was organized and how its people lived during the height of the kingdom. One of the most impressive findings involved the famous Stele Fields. Archaeologists confirmed that many of the towering stone monuments were placed above underground tombs belonging to kings and powerful nobles. Inside some of these tombs, researchers found chambers carefully built from large stone blocks. These rooms once held valuable objects, offerings, and items placed there to honor the dead. Coins discovered in the region also provided important clues about Axum's history. Many of these coins featured the faces of Axumite kings and inscriptions, written in the Ge'ez language. Some even included Christian symbols, helping historians confirm when the kingdom adopted Christianity. Because coins can often be dated accurately, they became valuable tools for reconstructing the timeline of the Axumite Empire. Artifacts such as pottery, tools, jewelry, and trade goods further revealed how connected Axum had been to the wider world. Items originating from the Mediterranean, Arabia, and even parts of Asia were found at archaeological sites. These discoveries confirmed that Axum had once been deeply involved in international trade networks. Through decades of excavation and research, scholars slowly reconstructed the story of Axum's rise, power, and eventual decline. Each new discovery added another piece to the puzzle of this remarkable civilization. Today, the ruins of Axum are recognized as one of the most important historical sites in Africa. The ancient monuments, tombs, and stone foundations offer a rare window into a powerful civilization that once connected Africa to distant regions of the ancient world. Historians continue studying the site, hoping to uncover more information about how the Axumite kingdom developed and how its people lived. Modern technology has also helped researchers learn more about the ancient city. Tools such as satellite mapping, ground surveys, and advanced dating methods allow archaeologists to study the area without damaging fragile ruins. These techniques help reveal hidden structures buried beneath the soil and provide new insights into how the city expanded over time. The preservation of Axum's historical remains is now considered extremely important. Efforts have been made to protect the monuments and ensure that future generations can learn from them. Visitors from around the world travel to the site to see the towering stelae and explore the remains of the once powerful capital. The rediscovery and continued study of Axum has changed the way historians understand ancient African civilizations. For a long time, many global histories overlooked the achievements of powerful kingdoms that developed on the African continent. The story of Axum proves that Africa was home to complex societies that built cities, controlled trade networks, and influenced global history. Although the empire itself eventually faded, the legacy of Axum continues to grow as historians uncover more about this extraordinary civilization. The ruins of the city remain a powerful reminder that one of the ancient world's great kingdoms once thrived in the highlands of East Africa.